get really big, the huge Jewish nose. But anyway, so here's the thing. When we look at God's standard would be the Ten Commandments. If you were one of the 160,000 people that were going to die today, do you think by that standard you'd be innocent or guilty?
I can say I'm innocent, but I can be guilty at the same time.
Well, every criminal goes before court and claims his own innocence. But in an absolute court of law, would you be innocent or guilty by that standard?
I'd be guilty.
Yeah, we both would. God says if you even look at someone with lust, that you've committed adultery in your heart. So by that standard, I've broken all 10 of the 10 commandments. All right? So let me ask you this. Would you think that you deserve heaven or hell? We both want heaven. I grant you that. But by that standard, if we're guilty, which would we deserve? Hell. All right. Now, does that concern you at all? Why does it not concern you?
Because I'm not a follower of religion, so I don't think past my everyday life just because I do.
You can go straight.
Taco place. I don't follow this moral conduct that gets us to feel guilty in any way.
I'm not trying to make you feel guilty.
No. Okay. I'm just saying that. This whole concept of where I'm going to end up, every day, where I end up is where I'm going to end up ultimately. It's all messed up. So I'm just going to.
You said, because he said a really interesting thing. You said something about guilt, which is what most people think religion's about. And many people do. They think it's about guilt. And there's a good reason for that. Because we have guilty consciences when we do something wrong. There's a way to tell the difference between a man-made religion and the true religion that God said. And it's not really religion, but what God said. Here's how you can tell. A man-made religion, every man-made religion, which would include Islam, Judaism, which is what my background was, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of them, they all base everything on human effort. That men can be good and outweigh the bad, that men can somehow earn heaven, earn righteousness with God. But all that does is produce more guilt, right? Because they can't do it. They do something wrong, they know it's wrong, they end up feeling that guilty conscience. What I'm telling to you is what God says is different, okay? Maybe you've never heard it before. Because what God did is God himself left heaven, came to earth as a man. Being God, he can pay an eternal fine. Being a man, he can pay a fine for men, okay? So he came to earth to die to offer forgiveness of sin. You see, that's how you get rid of the guilt. And that's what we're actually talking about, is not to make people feel guilty, but maybe to recognize that we already have that guilt and how to have that forgiven. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that concept. Religion doesn't just end there. It extends to like far controversial aspects of it. And, that's the part that I'd rather not mess with it in general.
Okay.
I do get that point. It's a moral limit. You understand
No,
that?
actually it's not. That's the whole thing. It's not a moral limit.
But we admit that he died for our sins.
Yeah.
And that he said we are going to fight. He gave up his entirety to us. So we just have to live knowing that we have to trust our lives entirely to him. So we just live our lives according to how we're already living. There's no moral standard there to live in it because we already are sinners. We're already.
All right.
That's what I.
Let me give you a scenario and see how you'll react to it. So, let's just pretend, because you're probably a pretty decent guy, this would never happen, but say you did something bad, and you ended up going before a judge, and he told you had a $10 million fine. Now, you don't happen to have $10 million laying around, do you?
No.
No, because you'd be over at the Super Bowl with like 50-yard line first-year tickets, right? Okay, so here's the thing. You have a $10 million fine. Say that some complete stranger comes into the courtroom and writes you a check for $10 million. He sold his Lamborghini so that he could pay your fine. He writes you a check, right? Now here's the thing. You have to, first off, you got to believe that that check's real because you don't want to go to jail for fraud, right? Okay? So if you believe that check, you're going to put trust in it by writing your name on the back and endorsing it and handing it to the judge. The judge is going to tell you you're free to go, isn't it? Yeah, because the payment's been made, right? Judge doesn't care so much where the money came from. He just wants to make sure that it was paid. Now you see that guy that just paid your fine, and he's hitching a ride to New York because he sold his Lamborghini to pay your fine. You got yourself a car. You were looking at life in prison because you couldn't pay the fine. Would you give him a ride?
Right?
Yeah. You were looking at going to jail.
Right.
It is. You see, the point is that most of us at least, would be more than happy to give him a ride. Why? Because of what he did for us, right? We wouldn't see it as a work. We wouldn't see it as something that's like, oh, I gotta do this. We wouldn't see that as something that we have guilt over. We would see that as something that, I'd love to do it. I'm happy to do it because of what you did for me, right? That's the motivation difference. And when we realize that God came to earth and died in our place to offer us the forgiveness of sin, it's not a guilt thing. It's not trying to live morally, because living morally isn't going to get us in the right state with God. We live morally for a different reason. We want to live morally because we want to please someone who did something we could never do for ourselves. Do you see the difference?
Yes and no, but
Okay, so it's a motivation difference.
Yeah.
If I'm doing it based on works, it's about me trying to earn my way, trying to get my way to heaven, and I'm going to have to try to live this way versus doing it because I love somebody.
yeah, more or less. I ain't lie, we do gotta take off though.
Okay, hey, if I gave you a gift, a CD, would you listen to it? A CD.
No. I'd rather just talking to you is more or less what I like to do. I want to hear what you have to say. The CD, chances are I won't even have to.
Well, you won't. All right.
But this experience.
Well, here's the thing. If I can give you the CD and you listen to it, if you want to talk about it, I'll fly out here, buy you dinner.
I'm from Flagstaff.
I'm from Jersey. Don't hold it against me.
From Ohio.
Jersey kind of has a bad reputation. We're near New York, Hey. All right, man. It was good talking to you.
Think about what he talked about.
So, folks, if you're listening.